Hey guys, this is Drag Race Season 12, Episode 2, You Don't Know Me, the second part of the two-part premiere. And right off the bat, we have to talk about the cherry pie drama. So I assume you all know, but I'm going to kind of rehash it, which is about 3 hours before the premiere. Drag Race announced that they were going to disqualify Sherry Pie, but they were going to still air the season. There was no time to re-edit it. So I assume going forward they're going to do some editing. So if you haven't, I haven't noticed how heavily we rely on the confessionals to tell the story of what's happening and how people are feeling, but it's really clear that they thought, Britta in episode 1, I made the comment about how if Britta goes, no one will be talking. So in episode 1, they really relied on Britta to tell you the storyline. Not everybody is good with communicating the nuances of how everyone was feeling, is entertaining, does it in a way that fits, blah, 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 blah. Sherry Pie was that person for episode 2. And for those of you who don't know the situation with Sherry Pie, it came out, I've been off social media. I'm trying to write my books, I'm trying to do the YouTube channel, I have a podcast, I have all this stuff going on, and so I've gotten off Facebook. So the first I heard of it was when one of the gossip channels was like, oh my gosh, can you believe what happened? And so I was like, what? So I Googled and found like a BuzzFeed article that explained that at this point, as of yesterday, at least 6 people have come forward saying that Sherry Pie or Joey had recommended them to a casting agent, Allison, who had them like audition and videotape themselves audition, and they talked and talked and talked and talked, and they had the audition scenes were all very, there was like some weird, well, I don't want to say weird because that's judgy. There was some alluded sexual content, so some of it was just flat out sexual. Based on what I heard, but a lot of it sounded like it was kind of next door to, anyway, let's just say that there were audition scenes that in retrospect people felt really uncomfortable when they realized this was a fake person and that they were most likely being catfished by Sherry Pie, because when they talked around, everyone had been referred to by Sherry, no one else had met this person, at least one person like called the agency that Allison was supposedly working with and found there was no such person. And so it kind of came forward. Sherry Pie wrote an apology, didn't deny any of it. I only kind of skimmed the apology because, like I said, there's only so much I can follow with these shows, and so I kind of limit it to what I see on the air. So I have just enough to know. So the way it looks like a lot of people are going to handle it is they're just not going to dress her. That's kind of how I'm going to do it. It's kind of impossible because it's, you know, everyone's all mixed up together. But in general, I didn't bother to write down my feelings about it, this or that. It looks like RuPaul, so every season we have people like Katya is a great example of someone who they just find very endearing. They're going to do all the interviews are really interesting. That was like a Bianca Del Rio. Katya, it tends to be people, so what it sounds like is they really saw Sherry as being a contender. I've heard that she was going to be in the finale. I've heard that she's top 4. I can't really say how I would have felt about Sherry, because this just colors everything. I mean, as it should. I mean, so anyway, so I'm just not going to discuss it much beyond that. I'm just going to leave it be. Okay. So the original premiere, leave a message on the mirror. We done already had ours is. I love that when Britta talks, I can see every one of Britta's teeth, like every one of them. And then Britta in this where she's got her hair up and it's kind of out here reminds me so much of Michelle from Marriage Boot Camp. She's the one who's with a really high voice, but for whatever reason, every time I see that image of Britta, it looks so much like her. So, Rock'em Sock'em comes out, it has an anime. I find them immediately very endearing. I'm going to stop watching the pre-season media coverage because I kind of feel like all my initial reactions to these characters has changed. Drag Queens has changed a bit, and I just don't want any more of that. So, and I'm also not watching, the only recap I'm watching is Review with a Jew, which is excellent. That's Miss Cracker from, hopefully, winner of the next All-Star season. I love Miss Cracker. Super entertaining recap. You definitely should go watch. But I did see one thing where Fashion Photo Review, Raven goes, that makeup is Kimchi and Trixie Mattel. And I love Raven, but I have no time for that, okay? There's only so much you can do with makeup. The eyes have to be where the eyes are. The mouth has to be where the mouth is. So it really frustrated me because there's two aspects that I think that they're saying, oh, she's copying Kimchi, and she kind of said it with an attitude, and I was really disappointed because as creatives, we know that there are only so many paths out from one point, and sharing some elements like big eyes. Everyone's got big eyes. I think specifically is both Kimchi and Trixie have white under the eyes, but Rockham pushes them so far. Like the anime, the white has so much white that you cannot say this is a stolen look. The other thing is the real strong kind of, I'll say like the cut crease style blush. It feels like half the drag queens that I see on RuPaul's Drag Race are doing that versus the old school contours where you just think they have these amazing cheekbones, and when you get closer you go, oh, that's brown. So, but where like Trixie and Kim both have the really strong, and they don't have the same makeup as each other. I just saw they just had an episode where they switched makeup, and you could see how they were different. So it really frustrated me that Raven did that, so I will not stand for it. Okay, Rock'em Sock'em immediately did Dahlia Sin, a lot more likable than what I saw in the Meet the Queens episode. Aja's drag daughter, likes drama, all that stuff. I like Dahlia a little more than I thought I would, but still not, like, I thought I would dislike her. I like her. You know, Jan, and I want to say about Rockham is that we had a UK queen who had a similar, not a similar anime style, but as in, this is not the only person on earth who's doing this. Can't remember the name, wasn't going to pull up the recap, so look them up and all that, just enough to say. Jan, New York City, everyone's from New York City, but I guess that makes sense. Like if you were to say, oh, we got a bunch of working actors. Probably half of them are in Hollywood, the other half are in New York. So it kind of makes sense that a majority of these queens are in New York City. One of the things that bothered me about Jan is the bust is hovering several inches away from the body. Same thing I keep saying. It's like the drag queens have no idea what to do with the bust. If you're not going to have a bust, then have the stuff fitted close. If you are going to have a bust, then have a bust. But the busts are here and here and here and here. I know it's a minor thing, but I feel like if Michelle Visage can be frustrated about a tuck or the way the hips look, we can kind of address this. So it's just got to be a decision. Jan reminds me a lot of people, not just me. I'm not the first person to make this observation. Cheryl Hole from Drag Race UK, who I liked, and I'm going to recap that season if you want to go back and watch. A singer, really just seems like a nice person. Jada Essence Hall, very feminine. Not a huge fan of drag queens who are like, I guess there's other styles, but I think it's only this and it should be this. But then I go, yeah, but I also kind of feel like if you're not entertaining, I'm not really interested. So I get it. Aiden Zane, Spooky Atlanta, reminds me a little bit of Scaredy Cat from Drag Race UK, who had never performed before the season. That is a huge disadvantage. I'm not saying they can't be good, because we always have the Insta queens, and you're like, oh, well, if you're an Instagram queen, you can't be very good. And time again, we see that just because they're famous on Instagram doesn't mean that they're only good on Instagram. But I do kind of get the other queens when they're like, well, where do you perform? Oh, I don't. Well, what do you know, where's your home bar? I don't have one. Well, where do you go? I go about an hour away. But I only go every once in a while. Well, then where do you perform? I don't perform anywhere. I kind of get there like, oh, like that's if someone came to me and they were like, I'm a novelist. And I'm like, oh, what do you write? I don't write anything. Oh, well, did you write anything? No, I've never written anything. Well, are you going to? No, not really. You'd be like, oh, okay. So I kind of get that. Both Aiden and Sherry Pie, but Aiden have their makeup going straight up. It's visually not a look that I like. The makeup goes straight up as opposed to winged out. It's new, it's different. I'm not really drawn to it. Doesn't mean that it's not valid. Just means I'm not really drawn to it. They do a spring and fall runway. Rockham did the drawing herself, always higher. Dahlia had a really beautiful neon sexy dress. Jan had no bust. Sitting off chest. Okay, I guess I have the same criticism for that. Jada the lady. I was surprised at how much I liked Aiden's outfits for this. It was the first one was very Goldie Hawn on Laugh-In. Rockham talks about being raised by TV. That's something I can, saying that I don't really connect with my Vietnamese or Filipino heritage. I mostly relate to the TV that I grew up on. And I feel like, who doesn't relate to that? Who doesn't? Well, maybe some of you guys do. I had great parents, wonderful childhood, watched so much TV. It's definitely hugely influenced me and the style that I do, and watching, all these sitcoms influenced my aesthetic so much as my voice. So I totally get it. Dahlia had a sort of a Dr. Zhivago look. Jan had the croc look. Jada had a beautiful power suit, which was super feminine, which can be hard to do in a suit. They've mentioned that before. This is clearly a woman's suit, but it had so many little touches. I realized it's very rare for me to say, I want that exactly as it is for me to wear. And I was like, oh, okay, which does fit with her view of being very feminine, female energy, traditionally female kind of thing. So they do a Fosse song. Sherry Pie says, well, I do all this stuff, but I think Rockham, you should do it. So Rockham steps up. It's really hard to tell because we saw 5 minutes. And they edit it together, so it's really hard to tell. It sure looks like they changed the intro every couple of minutes, but we know that wasn't the case because they had something to do the next day. It didn't look anything like what they practiced. For me, and then it was really funny because they said, well, have you seen? Sherry was a little bit like, well, have you, like, kind of this assumption that only she would know who Fosse was, and so she's kind of giving Rockham a hard time, like, well, have you seen Chicago? And she's like, yeah, the city. I'm kidding. Yes, I've seen the show. Like, it was very good timing. I thought it was really funny. I'm finding Rockham to be very endearing. I felt that Sherry Pie was really, like, ramping up the drama, like, nobody knows what Fosse is but me. And I didn't really get that vibe from anybody else. But when they're doing it, Jada comes off as very much like wanting to kill everyone else, really upset. What I'm trying to remember is that could very well be nerves coming out as frustration. We don't, I'm trying to be a little bit more understanding of the fact that some people don't have, including me, has traditionally come off as bitchy when it's nerves or fear or awkwardness, and you think everybody can see how uncomfortable you are, and no one else can. All they see is that you being rah, 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 rah. And you're like, that is so not me. I am scared to death. And so I'm trying to, we're going to have to give Jada a couple, because my initial response is like, gosh, she's got an attitude. Well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Nikki, let's just calm down. But what broke my heart was how quickly Rockham was like, this is my fault. I thought there was a lot of people giving a lot of input. There was a lot of dynamics. Everyone's nervous. It's the first episode. Choreographing with 6 people and you kind of making it up. It just seems like it's a situation set up for drama, which it is because it's a reality show. It's meant to be interesting. So, but Rockham was so quick to take all of the blame that kind of made me feel bad because I didn't necessarily see it as being all her fault. And then they were like, you know, then Aiden was like, I'm really nervous, and said something really interesting, which is all night at the hotel, every commercial break, I had my things in my ear. And I thought, every commercial break? Maybe you should just turn off the TV and practice. But somehow that kind of made it seem like, yeah, I studied for finals all night. Every commercial break, I would mute it and study. And you go, wait a second. That's not how it works. So Rockham, I am on social media because of this situation. I did look on Twitter. I couldn't log in, but I could see it. And a lot of people felt that the whole thing with Rockham was like just producer stuff. And I felt that's unfair because I don't think Rockham brought it up just because of that. But you know, I'll tell you, the act of creation and the act of being isolated and having this huge prize does bring out things in yourself that you wouldn't think of. On a day-to-day basis, you can just go on road, on automatic pilot, you don't think about it. In this kind of situation, that is not the case at all. So, so he comes up and he's like, guys, I'm so sorry, you know, I had this problem with my mom, and so I feel really guilty taking responsibility for anyone else. To me, it made a lot of sense why they would feel that way, Rockham would feel that way. It's very sweet. Everyone was very sweet about it. And of course, totally endeared Rockham to me. I'm finding them more interesting than I thought they would be. So when you see, and I don't mean that badly, like, but when you see the previews, you only get this little slice of someone and you don't know how that's going. Like, you get a peek into a room, and sometimes the peek into the room that you get is not as interesting as when you walk into the room. Sometimes you see something through the window that looks really, through the doorway, and it looks super interesting. When you walk in, you discover it's the only thing in the room that's interesting. Sometimes you get a peek in, you get like a bit of curtain and a white wall, and then when you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see all the rest of this stuff. So for me, Rockham, and like Jan were people that when I walked into the room, I was like, oh, this is so much more interesting. Britta, not the only ones at all. So Aiden, they do their number. I'm not great at dance and music, so you have to like fall off the stage for me really to notice. Or do like a hiding in closet who looks to me just like Kennedy Davenport. Like sometimes it's so quick that I'll think, oh, Kennedy's back. Like super quick cut. Like at the end of the episode, I was like, oh, Kennedy. Oh, wait, not Kennedy. So anyway, specifically in drag. So they said Aiden had a meaty tuck. I thought when they had the wardrobe, I was like, I have never seen such womanly thighs. Women kind of have meaty, stocky thighs, and Aiden kind of had that. And I was like, oh, okay, that is a womanly, not like a womanly like the way you would do it, but like a genuine, like your friend who goes to the pool and is like, my thighs are so big, and you're like, no girl, you look great, you look super cute. If you stop trying to say how womanly how fat your thighs are, no one would notice. It was like those thighs, probably very akin to my thighs. So I thought that was really interesting how traditionally female looked, but not necessarily femininity. Do you know what I mean? Like the difference between like the ideal womanly body that Photoshop pushes us versus like the reality of if you took 100 women and looked at them. So the real woman, which everyone's, you know, anyway, don't need to get into all that. Dahlia, Jan they thought was interesting because she did the tool. They didn't really like, Michelle liked the outfit but didn't like the lyrics. Ross Matthews seemed to like the lyrics a little bit more, didn't like the outfit. It's always funny. So they do the exact same thing. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. How in the world are Jada and Sherry and Top? I didn't think Sherry did that well, but I didn't think Jada did that well. I thought they all did well. So I think that's a better way of saying it. It's not that I thought Jada did badly so much as I thought they all did well. I don't know who I would have picked, so I guess I don't have a problem with the ones on top, because like the first episode was a really strong episode. They don't really judge on things like who did the choreography and stuff like that. They clearly thought Sherry was going to be a standout for the season and a fan favorite because all of the interviews were with her, all of the description, and so I think it's really likely that they're going to try to go back. And they can't edit her out. But what they can do is get other confessionals, because right now it's like we got 40 confessionals from Sherry, and every time you do, you're kind of like, ugh, because you don't want to, at least for me, I didn't want to connect with that. I kind of went to be like, okay, hopefully you go next episode, but it seems like it's a real shame for the other queens, because I think it's going to end up tainting this season a lot. I think people are not going to want to connect the same way they would. I don't know. I'll tell you, Sherry Pie, if you're watching this, do not get off social media. Do not watch any of this stuff. It's going to kill you. Go get help. Go into an outpatient clinic if you have any problems with alcohol or drugs that have made the behavior worse. I don't know. I'm just saying it's kind of already, I feel like my energy is like for this episode is like a 70 versus my last episode was at 100 or 105. So they're like, okay, now you can meet the other queens. I kind of don't get this whole like us versus them thing, because those are also like, everyone's also your competitor. Like I get you met them a little bit later, but whatever. But I guess it makes it interesting. So they're all like, meh, 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 boring, 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 boring. Okay, we get it. You know. So hopefully that doesn't last forever. I don't think it did in I don't think it did it really in season 6, so I don't think it'll happen now. And that's about it. Now that you've met all the queens, do you have any opinions? Do you have any thoughts going forward? All that. Otherwise, I will see you later.